Chapter 1. The Vanishing of the Hands. The morning was crisp when Hercule Poirot arrived at the stately home of Sir Edmund Langley, a proud Victorian mansion nestled in the rolling Surrey countryside. The sun had barely risen above the horizon, casting long shadows beneath the ancient oaks lining the gravel driveway. Poirot's little grey Peugeot idled at the front gate, and from its passenger seat, Captain Arthur Hastings peered up at the imposing facade with polite curiosity. "Voilà, Hastings," Poirot murmured, adjusting his perfectly waxed moustaches. "The situation is, I believe, quite extraordinary." Hastings stepped from the car, tying his scarf against the stiff wind. "You said it was about o'clock?" he asked, glancing at the ornate timepiece standing sentinel in the gravel courtyard. It was a large freestanding grandfather clock, its mahogany case gleaming in the early light. Yet Hastings noticed immediately that its face was blank. No hour or minute hands of any kind. Sir Edmund Langley himself emerged from the front door, an ageing gentleman with a stern expression. He was dressed in formal morning attire, waistcoat, cravat, and a silver pocket-watch chain draped across his vest. Ironically, the only hands visible that day belonged to his own watch. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot. Welcome, Captain Hastings," Langley said in precise tones. "Thank you for coming so promptly. As you see, the hands of my grandfather's clock have vanished. At least, I should say they were taken, though by whom I cannot imagine." Poirot bowed, his gait polite yet purposeful. Sir Edmund, I trust cabinet servant or guest, might have seen something unusual. Langley's lips thinned. "My staff are loyal to a fault. None would dare interfere with family heirlooms. Yet last night at precisely midnight, the clock chimed once and then fell silent. This morning the face is bare. There are no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the soft dew around it. It is as though the hands simply disappeared into thin air." Hastings frowned. Surely there must be a clue. A ladder leaning against the clock, a broken case on the ground. Something? Sir Edmund shook his head. "Nothing. My butler, Mr. Finnegan, and my maid, Miss Trent, have searched everywhere. The hands themselves are fashioned from silver and black steel. Valuable, yes, but hardly of such worth that they would vanish without more evidence." Poirot stepped closer for inspection, tapping the clock's smooth glass face with a delicate fingertip. He frowned, perhaps noticing a small, almost imperceptible scratch at the edge of the glass hinge. Hastings watched as Poirot rotated the clock's face slightly, peering at the mechanism within. "The cover is not locked in the usual fashion," Poirot murmured. "Curious." Sir Edmund looked concerned. "I had the clock checked by Mr. Vaughan, the local clockmaker, just a fortnight ago. He assured me it was in perfect working order. He would have noticed any irregularity with the locking catch." Poirot nodded gently. "And yet, monsieur, someone has removed the hands. My little grey cells shall investigate every possibility. The how, the why, and especially the who." Hastings raised an eyebrow. "Is it possible they were removed some time ago? If the mechanism is broken, the hands might have fallen inside, hidden from sight." Poirot shook his head decisively. "But then we would find them, non? And Monsieur Langley would surely have noticed a rattling or jam in the workings. No, someone took them deliberately. I note also that the clock's bell rope is still taut, suggesting that the mechanism has not been tampered with since the last chime. Remarkable. Sir Edmund's voice trembled slightly. I had hoped this was merely a prank, a jape to puzzle me. But my sister's silver pocket-watch was stolen 2 weeks ago, also removed cleanly from my desk at midnight. I thought perhaps the culprit was a petty thief, taking small valuables. But now, with these clock hands— Timing is everything, Poirot interjected calmly. A theft in the dead of night, executed without disturbance to other valuables. It suggests someone who knows exactly what they want and why. Tell me, Sir Edmund, where was your sister's watch found afterward? The baronet's face darkened. Never. It simply vanished. Poirot studied Sir Edmund with keen interest. You have no suspects? Langley shook his head. None. The household is small. Myself, my sister Lady Beatrice Langley, Mr. Finnegan the butler, Miss Trent the maid, Mr. Vaughan the clockmaker, who left an hour after his inspection, and my solicitor, Mr. Caleb Morley, who stays in the guest wing. None have motive, to my knowledge. Poirot tapped his chin thoughtfully. It is possible the thefts are connected. The watch and the clock hands are both made of precious metal, silver, if I am not mistaken. But there may be another reason, a cipher perhaps. Did either item bear any inscription or significance beyond mere ornament? Sir Edmund hesitated. My sister's watch bore her initials, BL, and the date of our father's death. The clock was built by my grandfather, a renowned horologist. It has served in our family for generations. It is symbolic of our heritage. Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. So, if someone wanted to send a message— Poirot's eyes glowed. Exactement. Perhaps, Hastings, our thief is playing at symbolism, removing the father's memory by taking away the hands of time. Sir Edmund paled, gripping the pocket-watch at his waist. You think someone is after our family legacy? Poirot raised a finger. Patience, mon ami. We shall uncover the truth in due course. First, I must interview each member of the household, examine the grounds for all possible entry points, and consider any tiny detail, no matter how insignificant, that might lead us to the culprit. He stepped back from the clock and gave Sir Edmund a reassuring nod. Fear not, Sir Edmund. The little grey cells are already at work. By tonight, I trust we will find the key to this puzzling theft. As Poirot and Hastings made their way toward the door, the clock stood silent in the courtyard, its face empty, its secret waiting to be revealed. Chapter 2. Secrets Behind the Face. Hercule Poirot entered the grand hall with Captain Hastings close behind, their shoes clicking on the marble floor. Sir Edmund introduced them to his staff, the butler, Mr. Finnegan, and the maid, Miss Trent. Poirot noted their bows and expressions. We must speak with each of you, he announced. I seek only the truth about last night. Please remain calm and candid. First, Poirot turned to Mr. Finnegan, a tall man of 50, whose uniform was impeccable. Poirot's eye caught a faint smudge of grease on his cuff. Monsieur Finnegan, he said, did you wind the clock last night and approach it afterward? Did, monsieur, Finnegan answered. I wind it at 8 every evening, then oversaw supper. I retired to my quarters and did not return until morning, when I discovered the hands missing. Poirot plucked a single hair from Finnegan's sleeve with a gloved finger and secured it in a small vial. Next, Poirot asked Miss Trent to accompany him to the library. "I heard noises around midnight," she whispered, "metal scratching, as if someone pried the clock. This morning I found the glass panel covering the face was loose. It lifts easily if one knows where to press." Poirot examined the clock in the courtyard. As Miss Trent demonstrated, he noticed tiny scratches on the hinge, almost invisible. He knelt, finding disturbed dust around the edges, and jotted notes in his notebook. "Thank you, mademoiselle. This detail may prove crucial." In the drawing-room, Lady Beatrice Langley sat by a window, clutching an embroidered handkerchief. "I cannot believe anyone would violate my father's memory," she said softly. Poirot asked if she had observed any unusual visitors or correspondence. Lady Beatrice shook her head. "Only Mr. Morley, our solicitor. He visited twice for estate matters. He seemed eager for closure, though he insisted everything was straightforward." Monsieur Morley waited in the study, his posture rigid. Dressed in dark tweed, he greeted Poirot politely, but avoided eye contact. "The estate is settled," he said tersely. "No disputes. I visited to finalize documents." Poirot observed beads of sweat on Morley's forehead. "You were here last night as well?" Poirot inquired. "Only to retrieve papers, I thought." "Misplaced," Morley replied. "My nights are spent at my lodgings." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Poirot returned to the clock's mechanism for closer inspection. Opening the back panel, he discovered fresh lubrication near the gears, unusual for routine winding. Between two cogs, he found a tiny scrap of paper, torn from a ledger. With tweezers, he extracted and unfolded it. Expenses, silver components withheld. He placed the slip into his pocket, convinced it indicated someone accounted for the missing parts. That evening, Poirot met Hastings in his quarters at the manor. A single candle flickered as they reviewed the evidence. "Observe, Hastings, grease on Finnegan's cuff, a hinge forced by someone who knows the latch, and this ledger fragment suggesting silver parts were noted." He tapped the paper thoughtfully. "Who benefits? Someone combining knowledge of clockwork and finances plans to profit. We must uncover who that is." Hastings frowned. An insider then, moving silently. "Exactement," Poirot agreed. "Tomorrow we shall confront our suspects with this information and watch their reactions. The one who falters will reveal the truth." Poirot paused, then added quietly, "Tonight, Hastings, I propose we verify alibis and set a discreet watch near the clock. The culprit may attempt another move once they believe suspicion has passed." With that, Poirot extinguished the candle, leaving only the soft tick of the clock, its hands still missing, its secret drawing closer to revelation. Chapter 3. Footsteps in the Dew. At dawn's pale light, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings met at the courtyard, where the blank-faced clock stood sentinel. The night had passed without further incident, but Poirot's discreet watch, stationed among the hedges, had observed something peculiar. Faint footprints leading away from the clock's base toward the garden gate. Hastings pointed to the prints in the soft dew. "Small boot, narrow tread," Hastings murmured. "It seems someone returned after our visit." Poirot crouched to inspect the impressions. "Indeed, mon ami. These tracks are not from Sir Edmund's servants. They wear polished shoes that leave a wider print. Nor are they from the solicitor, Mr. Morley. His boots have a distinct heel pattern. Let us follow them carefully. They advanced along the path, stopping where footprints entered a narrow side gate. Beyond lay the rose garden, dew glistening on petals. The trail continued past a stone bench toward the gardener's shed. There, Poirot peered inside to find a discarded leather glove, damp with dew and flecked with soil. "Ah, a clue!" Poirot exclaimed. He carefully bagged the glove. "Observe the stitching. Industrial, machine-made, not a bespoke garment. The glove is neither too large nor small, suggesting an average hand. This may belong to our nocturnal visitor." Hastings nodded. "But whose glove is this? Someone on the premises must have lost it last night." Poirot rose, sweeping his gaze over the neatly trimmed hedges. "Let us return to the manor and question the staff. Perhaps one will recognize this glove. I suspect our culprit has been watching the courtyard and the clock for some time." Back in the drawing-room, Poirot summoned Mr. Finnegan. When the butler entered, Poirot placed the glove on a velvet cushion before him. "Monsieur Finnegan, this glove was found near the garden shed. Does it belong to you?" Finnegan's eyes flickered, but he remained composed. "No, monsieur, it does not. I use gloves for gardening, but my pair are knitted and green." He paused. "I wondered why the gardener's shed was left unlocked last night. I informed him this morning, but he said nothing was missing." Poirot nodded, then dismissed him. Next, he called Miss Trent, showing her the glove. She examined the stitching thoughtfully. "It resembles a pair Mr. Morley wears, monsieur. I recall seeing him gardening on his visits. He likes to prune roses when he stays here." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. "Strange. Why would the solicitor be in the garden at midnight?" Poirot tapped his chin. "Indeed, we must. Confront Mr. Morley. I propose we proceed at once." They found Mr. Morley in the study, papers spread across the desk. Poirot placed the glove before him. Morley's face paled. Where did you find that?" he stammered. "Near the gardener's shed," Poirot replied evenly. "Can you explain your presence there after dark?" Morley swallowed, was retrieving a document I believed I had dropped near the clock. "I thought hearing things around midnight. I slipped outside quietly so as not to disturb anyone." He looked away. "I did not take the clock hands." Poirot studied Morley's features. "A plausible explanation, monsieur. But why enter the garden shed? And why drop this glove when you claim to have only been at the clock?" Morley hesitated, then admitted, "I've grown fond of these roses. I often step outside to breathe fresh air. At midnight, I paused in the garden after inspecting the clock. This glove slipped from my hand when I knelt to examine the mechanism." He gestured toward the clock, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "Hastings," murmured, "yet you said you went only for the document. Why mention the roses now?" Morley's expression tightened. "I've nothing more to say." He folded his arms, stiffening. Poirot nodded slowly. "Very well. You leave us no choice but to verify your alibi. We will speak with Miss Trent, who saw you gardening earlier, and examine the clock's mechanism, again for fingerprints or other evidence." He stood and bowed politely. "Thank you, Mr. Morley. Your cooperation is appreciated." Once Morley withdrew, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Mon ami, Mr. Morley's account is inconsistent with the facts. Moreover, I suspect another motive. He benefits, should the clock be deemed irreparable, hastening settlement of Sir Edmund's estate. But we still lack proof. We must search his rooms for the ledger fragment I retrieved last night and consider if he predicted the theft to cover some financial irregularity. Hastings frowned. So, our suspect remains Mr. Morley? For now, Poirot agreed. But let us not be hasty. We must also question Mr. Vaughan, the clockmaker. His familiarity with the mechanism might enable such a precise removal of the hands. Let us pay him a visit this afternoon. Poised between the manor's quiet halls, Poirot felt the familiar thrill of the chase. The puzzle deepened. A missing glove, a solicitor's secrets, and the silent clock waiting to reveal its hidden truth. As he and Hastings prepared to pursue the next lead, the morning sun climbed higher, illuminating a mystery that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the Langley inheritance. Chapter 4. The Clockmaker's Confession. That afternoon, Hercule, Poirot and Captain Hastings set out in Poirot's little grey Peugeot toward the outskirts of Surrey, where Mr. Jonathan Vaughan, the local clockmaker, maintained a modest workshop. The narrow country road wound through fields of ripening wheat, the air fragrant with wildflowers. Hastings peered through the window. "It's a peaceful place for such a curious business," he observed. Poirot merely smiled, eyes keen for the slightest detail. They arrived to find a weathered brick building with a brass sign reading J. Vaughan, horologist. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight. Dozens of clocks of all sizes and styles ticked in unison, creating a gentle chorus of time. Mr. Vaughan, a slender man with ink-stained fingers and spectacles perched on his nose, greeted them with polite reserve. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, good afternoon," he said, bowing slightly. "I trust Sir Edmund's clock is the subject of your visit." Poirot nodded, extending a gloved hand. "Thank you for seeing us so promptly, Monsieur Vaughan. We wish to clarify a few points regarding your inspection 2 weeks ago." Vaughan's eyes flickered. "Of course. I recall the clock well. It was in fine working order. I adjusted the movement slightly, lubricated the gears, and assured Sir Edmund all was well." "Precisely," Poirot agreed. "Yet now the hands have vanished. I seek to understand if any unusual observations occurred during your visit." Vaughan stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Nothing unusual, I assure you. I did notice a slight jolt in the second wheel, but nothing beyond routine wear. I marked it in my ledger, nothing more." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. "May we see that ledger, monsieur?" Mr. Vaughan hesitated, fidgeting with his spectacles. "I prefer not to. It's my private record." He steered them toward a workbench cluttered with springs, wheels, and tiny gears. "Please, inspect any clock you wish. I can demonstrate my craft." Poirot crouched beside the grandfather clock mechanism Vaughan had set up on a stand for demonstration. He gently turned the hands, though on this piece they were intact, for example's sake. "Your craftsmanship is admirable, but this clock, Sir Edmund's, has missing hands. Did you ever receive instruction or payment that might relate to the material cost of those hands?" Vaughan's face paled. "I was paid in full for my work, monsieur. The hands were original, preserved from his grandfather's workshop. I neither acquired nor sold new ones." Poirot nodded, producing the scrap of ledger paper he had found. He unfolded it carefully. This fragment mentions silver components. Withheld. It matches your ledger's hand. Might it refer to the hands being removed for resilvering or repair? Vaughan's breath trembled. He glanced at the fragment, then away. I did record that Sir Edmund owed for silver plating. I wrote simply that payment was withheld until completion. I did not remove any hands. Poirot levelled a steady gaze. If someone believed the hands needed resilvering, they might claim you removed them. Yet the theft occurred at midnight, when your workshop was closed. How could you have executed such a precise removal without tools or knowledge of that latch? The clockmaker's shoulders sagged. Monsieur, I may have been careless. I noted the latch design, simple to open if one knew its location, but I swear I did not take them. I was here all evening, repairing a carriage clock for Lady Beatrice. Hastings frowned. Is there anyone who saw you here until late? Vaughan nodded. Miss Trent visited to arrange a tea-time clock repair. We spoke briefly around 7. After that, I stayed to work. I left around 9 to fetch supplies, and returned to finish before closing at 10. He unravelled his story quickly. I then went home. You may check with my assistant, Mr. Dawkins, if you wish. Poirot stood and smoothed his coat. Merci, Monsieur Vaughan. We shall verify your alibi. There is one final question. Did you ever reveal the clock's inner workings or latch design to anyone beyond the household? Vaughan hesitated. I explained to Sir Edmund that the glass panel lifts upward, but nothing more. No one asked for specifics. Satisfied, Poirot inclined his head. Very well. We thank you for your time. As they turned to leave, Poirot's eyes lingered on a small silver gear on the workbench, its edges worn. He slipped it into his pocket, unseen. Once outside, Hastings asked, You believe he's innocent? Poirot considered. Perhaps he is. Yet note, the ledger fragment's mention of silver components, the intimate knowledge of the latch, and the faint residue of oil on that gear. Someone in this workshop had motive to mislead suspicion. But Monsieur Vaughan's innocence cannot be presumed. We must confirm Histamline and examine. That gear. It may have come from Sir Edmund's clock. Hastings nodded thoughtfully. Then our next step is to interview Mr. Dawkins and analyse this gear further. Exactement, Poirot agreed. The puzzle unfolds, Hastings. Soon we shall discover which tiny cog in the machine is out of place. As they climbed into the Peugeot, the workshop's clocks ticked on, marking moments that led them ever closer to the truth. Chapter 5. Secrets in the Solicitor's Quarters. Early. The next morning, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to the Langley Manor, determined to follow the next thread of the mystery. The sun had barely risen, and a soft mist clung to the hedgerows. Poirot's mind was already working through the possibilities, sorting each clue with meticulous care. Hastings, he said quietly, we must verify Mr. Vaughan's alibi and examine that silver gear. Moreover, we must revisit Mr. Morley's rooms. It is time to unearth what lies hidden there. They proceeded first to Mr. Vaughan's workshop to speak with his assistant, Mr. Arthur Dawkins. The narrow lane was empty, and birds chirped overhead as they approached the horologist's modest outbuilding. Dawkins, a young man with keen green eyes and ink stains on his apron, greeted them with subdued respect. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, How may I assist you?" Poirot produced a small slip of paper. "This fragment was found near Sir Edmund's clock. We understand it matches your master's handwriting, monsieur, but we also wish to confirm the timeline of Mr. Vaughan's evening." He fixed Dawkins with a gentle gaze. "You say he left at 9 to retrieve supplies?" Dawkins nodded. His expression guarded. "Yes, I saw him leave just after I closed the inner door at 9. I then worked alone until closing time at 10. After that I locked up and went home. I live just behind the workshop. Might you demonstrate for us how the latch mechanism on Sir Edmund's clock operates?" Poirot asked. "It may help us understand whether your master could have removed the hands so precisely." Dawkins removed a small demonstration clock from a shelf and set it on the bench. He pointed to the hinge at the top of the glass panel. "It requires this little notch to be pressed while lifting upward. Only someone aware of its placement could open it silently." He imitated the motion, and Poirot nodded appreciatively. "Merci, Monsieur Dawkins. Your assistance is invaluable." As they departed, Poirot paused at the door and added quietly, "Young man, should you remember anything else unusual about your master's behaviour, do not hesitate to inform us." Once, back at the manor, Hastings whispered, "That latch is too specialised. Only Mr. Vaughan or someone he instructed could have known it. But Morley's glove was found at the scene, not Vaughan's. It seems 2 figures may be involved." Poirot tapped his lips. "Possible, yet consider. An accomplice might have borrowed knowledge without taking credit. But now, Hastings, we go to Mr. Morley's quarters. I believe we shall find something telling." They climbed the wide staircase of the manor to the guest wing. Morley's rooms were neatly kept. A bed with crisp linen, a writing desk covered in papers, and a small leather-bound ledger lying open. Poirot surveyed the room, noting the soft carpet that showed only Hastings's footprints from that morning. On the desk, beside Morley's quill pen, stood a silver inkwell, tarnished at its base. Poirot frowned slightly, then moved to the wardrobe. Inside was a pair of identical gloves, stitching matching the one retrieved at the gardener's shed. Hastings produced the solitary glove from his pocket. "These are Mr. Morley's." Morley entered unexpectedly, attempting to close the door. Poirot gently blocked his path. "Monsieur, I hope you do not mind if we examine your possessions." Morley's face flushed. "I cannot allow you to rummage through my affairs. It is an invasion of privacy." Poirot maintained calm poise. "I understand your concern, but consider Mr. Langley's distress. We believe the missing clock hands and the fragment of your ledger indicate a financial motive. You were present at midnight. We must ensure no detail is overlooked." Under Poirot's unwavering gaze, Morley reluctantly stepped away. Poirot opened the ledger to the page containing the phrase "silver components withheld." The entry was faintly overwritten, a second notation faintly visible beneath. Using a small magnifying glass, Poirot revealed the earlier words. "Payment confirmed. Components ready for delivery." Hastings peered over his shoulder. Someone altered the ledger to suggest Vaughan was owed for silver plating. But why? Poirot extracted a small wooden box from Morley's desk drawer. Inside lay a set of tiny silver gears, identical in size and shape to the one Poirot pocketed at the clockmaker's shop. "Ah," Poirot murmured, "so the culprit took one gear, perhaps for identification, before removing the hands." Morley's expression darkened. I can explain, he stammered. Poirot held up a gloved hand. Please, monsieur, let us speak in private. They stepped into the hallway, leaving Hastings to oversee the search. Poirot guided Morley towards the library. Once seated, Poirot leaned forward. Monsieur Morley, this gear matches the mechanism of Sir Edmund's clock. Only one clockmaker here and one solicitor have the knowledge to remove it without detection. If you sought to accelerate the sale of the estate, you would want the clock deemed irreparable, correct? Morley's knuckles whitened on the armrest. You suspect I planned to profit from the sale. I admit, I discovered irregularities in Sir Edmund's investments. His finances were failing. He relied on the clock's sentimental value to preserve his family's prestige. I thought if the clock failed, he would sell land to cover debts. I confessed this in my private notes. He clutched his head. I never planned to harm anyone. I simply recorded what was happening. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet the theft of the hardy hands was necessary only if you intended deception. But you claim not to have taken them. Morley's voice broke. No, I did not. I took the ledger, page to cover my notes. I removed one gear to make the clock appear damaged beyond repair, but I replaced it before returning it. He paused. I had ready access to the clock for inspection at midnight. I meant to substitute a flawed gear. I did not intend the hands to vanish. Hastings entered, having found nothing more suspicious in the room. Poirot raised an eyebrow. Monsieur, you confess partial guilt. But then who removed the hands? Morley shook his head. I do not know. Poirot considered this new information. Hastings, our suspect may have feared Morley's scheme and seized the opportunity to steal the hands for another motive. We must determine whom that might be. He stood, smoothing his coat. Return to your duties, monsieur. We shall be in touch. As Morley departed, beaten and anxious, Poirot turned to Hastings. We have learned much. A falsified ledger, a removed gear, and a solicitor's quarrel with the family finances. Yet the hands remain missing. We must speak with Lady Beatrice. Perhaps she discovered something, or someone, that night. Zourain's purpose renewed, they descended the grand staircase. Outside, the garden's clipped hedges glistened with dew. The puzzle deepened. Financial ruin, hidden collusion, and a thief still at large. Poirot's grey cells hummed with anticipation as they headed toward Lady Beatrice's sitting room, ready to unmask the final conspirator and restore the clock to its rightful place. Chapter 6. A sister's secret late afternoon. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings ascended the broad staircase toward Lady Beatrice Langley's sitting room. The gentle hum of the household had quieted. Servants moved with hushed steps, aware that their mistress would receive no distractions. Hastings paused at the door, offering a respectful knock. Poirot opened it, revealing a room furnished in tasteful pastels, a faint rose-patterned carpet, a faint smell of lavender, and a writing desk strewn with correspondence and financial ledgers. Lady Beatrice sat in a high-backed chair near a bay window. She wore a silk gown of pale green, her auburn hair pinned back, and expression tired but composed. At her feet lay a small spaniel, its velvet ears twitching at their arrival. Poirot, Hastings, she greeted them, voice soft yet firm. Please, come in. They entered, and Poirot noted how Lady Beatrice's eyes flicked briefly to a closed cabinet behind her. He seated himself in a velvet-upholstered armchair facing her, while Hastings remained standing slightly to the side. "Lady Beatrice," Poirot began, "we are grateful for your time. We seek only the truth about last night's events and your perspective on the missing clock hands. I hope you will candidly share any detail, however small." She held his gaze steadily. "I am eager to see this matter resolved. Father's heirloom, this clock, meant everything to our family. I was not in the garden at midnight, but I did retire early, beside Father, whom I saw safely asleep at 11:30. Hastings interjected, "Then you did not hear anything unusual?" Lady Beatrice frowned. "Honestly, I slept lightly that night, as I often do, but I did not hear the clock chime. In fact, I felt restless and wandered to the window. That is when I saw—" She hesitated, clasping her hands. "I thought I saw someone standing near the courtyard clock, but it was too dark to make out who. Only a shadow." Poirot inclined his head. "A shadow near the clock. That aligns with footprints found near the garden gate. Did you sense whether the figure was tall or short, male or female?" Lady Beatrice swallowed. It appeared tall and slender, perhaps a man in a long coat. I recalled Mr. Morley's trench coat that I saw in his room earlier, but I cannot be certain. The darkness made it difficult to distinguish. After a moment I heard nothing more and returned to my room." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the cabinet behind you? What does it contain?" Lady Beatrice glanced at the closed doors. "Precious items mostly. Father's documents, our family jewels, nothing that could interest a common thief." She paused. "I suppose I should show you, but I feel it unseemly to reveal all my private possessions." Poirot leaned forward politely. "Understandable, madame. Yet if there is something concerning, it may illuminate the motive behind these thefts. We only ask that you consider the possibility of a connection." Lady Beatrice's gaze drifted toward the cabinet. After a moment she rose and opened it. Inside lay several bound volumes of financial records, an ornate jewellery box, and a small leather satchel. She took out the satchel, opening it to reveal a collection of silver cufflinks, engraved with the family crest, identical in material to the missing hands of the clock. "My father inherited these cufflinks from his grandfather," she explained. I discovered these were missing from my jewellery collection yesterday morning." "Missing cufflinks," Poirot repeated, fingertips tapping. "So now we have 3 missing items: your cufflinks, your father's clock hands, and your sister's watch previously taken. All silver. This suggests a pattern beyond mere sentimental theft. Who else knew of these cufflinks?" Lady Beatrice looked pained. "Only Father, I believed. Yet I fear someone close must have known. I did not mention them to anyone else, except perhaps Miss Trent when I wore them for tea last week." Poirot nodded. "We will speak with Miss Trent to see if she recalls anything. But first, tell me, did you show these cufflinks to Mr. Morley when he visited?" Lady Beatrice hesitated. "No, I did not. Although I did lend him a pen that once belonged to Father. He admired it, said it reminded him of our family's legacy. I assumed he was merely courteous." Hastings frowned. "A pen, cufflinks, watch, clock hands. Could these items be symbolic?" Perhaps the thief intends to gather silver artifacts representing time and memory. Poirot's eyebrow arched. Excellent observation, Hastings. But consider this. If someone sought to weaken Sir Edmund's morale by stealing sentimental heirlooms, they might then manipulate him into selling property. The theft of financial documents or their forgery could facilitate this. Lady Beatrice, did you note any unusual correspondence addressed to your father or your solicitor, possibly referencing the clock or estates? Lady Beatrice stared at the floor. Now that you mention it, I found a letter in Father's desk yesterday morning, though he had not intended me to see it. It was from a London attorney, a Mr. William Bright, inquiring aggressively about the clock's condition and suggesting urgent estate matters. Father seemed unsettled when I handed it to him. Poirot's eyes shone. A letter from Mr. Bright, in London. Did you read its contents? She nodded. It demanded a report on the clock's working order, and implied that if it were in disrepair, certain clauses in the will could be expedited. I feared it was a crude attempt to apply pressure, though Father dismissed it as banal legalese. Hastings exchanged a look with Poirot. Bright is not on our list of suspects. Yet his letter suggests he knew of the clock's significance. Could he be a conspirator, working with Morley? Poirot pressed his gloved fingers together. Possibly. There may be a network of colluding individuals, not just one lonely thief. Lady Beatrice, do you know if any servants spoke to a courier or messenger delivering such a letter? She bit her lip. The butler, Mr. Finnegan, mentioned receiving a sealed envelope early yesterday morning. He delivered it to Father without delay. After that, he placed it among Sir Edmund's personal papers, locked away. Poirot nodded. Very well. Hastings, we must question Mr. Finnegan about that delivery, and perhaps interview Mr. Bright in London, should access be possible. Lady Beatrice, thank you for your candour, and for sharing the discovery of missing cufflinks and that troubling letter. Lady Beatrice allowed a brief smile. We only hope we can recover these items. Father is distraught. Poirot rose and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Madame, rest assured, we are wholly focused on unravelling this web. Pray, get some rest, and if you recall any further detail, no matter how trivial, inform us at once. They departed the room, and as Poirot and Hastings headed down the corridor, Hastings exclaimed, So now we have Mr. Bright in London, an attorney with financial motives, and Morley's partial involvement. The puzzle grows more intricate. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, Hastings. Let us proceed to speak with Mr. Finnegan. Every piece of this puzzle leads us one step closer to discovering who dares to steal not merely silver, but our very sense of time and memory. With that, they hurried toward the butler's pantry, determined to pursue the next clue. Chapter 7. The butler's bird and late morning sunlight filtered through the manor's tall windows, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings arrived at the butler's pantry. Mr. Finnegan stood at attention, his posture rigid despite the strain in his eyes. The polished silverware and neatly arrayed trays behind him were in sharp contrast to the tension that now permeated the household. Poirot offered a polite bow, and Finnegan inclined his head in return. Monsieur Finnegan, Poirot began in his gentle French accent, we are grateful for your time. You received the letter from Mr. Bright yesterday morning. Would you recount everything about that delivery? Finnegan's lips compressed as he recalled the events. Yes, monsieur. A courier arrived just after 8 o'clock. He handed me a sealed envelope pressed with a silver crest I did not recognize. I delivered it immediately to Sir Edmund in his study. He glanced at it, frowned, and tucked it among his papers. After that, he seemed preoccupied. Poirot's keen eyes studied Finnegan's stoic expression. This courier, did he linger? Did you observe anything about his appearance or mannerisms? Finnegan folded his hands. He was a tall man, dark suit, gloves, neatly trimmed moustache. He waited about 10 minutes in the entrance hall before departing without a word. I offered him tea, but he refused curtly and left. Hastings frowned. Odd that he would refuse tea. Usually, gentlemen accept at least a cup. Finnegan shook his head. He seemed hurried, monsieur. I do not believe he belonged to this county. His accent was subtle, neither entirely London nor locale. Poirot steepled his fingers. I have observed the seal on that envelope bears a slight flaw in its engraving, suggesting it was hastily forged. Did you see if the letter carried any wax seal remnants on Sir Edmund's desk or attire? Finnegan hesitated, then replied, I noticed a small smear of dark wax near the edge of Sir Edmund's blotter. I cleaned it at once, before anyone else could see. Poirot's brows lifted. You cleaned it? Why did you remove that trace of wax? Finnegan's throat tightened. I feared it would stain his documents. I meant no harm, monsieur. I did not realize it might serve as evidence. A hush fell. Hastings leaned forward. Then the wax seal could have matched this courier's coat buttons or a ring. If we had preserved it, we might identify his origin. Finnegan lowered his gaze. Forgive me. I only wished to preserve Sir Edmund's papers. Poirot nodded kindly, but pressed on. Let us speak of other matters. Did you see Lady Beatrice leave her quarters last night? Or Mr. Morley? Anything unusual among the household? Finnegan cleared his throat. Lady Beatrice remained in her sitting-room. I saw her peek through her window around midnight, as she told you. As for Mr. Morley, I noticed him pacing in the hallway near the library shortly after 11. He paused outside Sir Edmund's door before moving away, perhaps seeking a final word with the baronet. Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. Morley claimed to have gone to his rooms, but perhaps he lingered longer. Poirot jotted notes. Did anyone else notice his presence near Sir Edmund's study? Finnegan shook his head. No, the household was silent. The cook and maid were in their quarters. The gardener remained in his shed until dawn. It was an eerie stillness. Poirot rose, smoothing his coat. Lastly, monsieur, there is the matter of Lady Beatrice's cufflinks. Do you know if she wore them as late as yesterday morning? Finnegan lifted a slender finger. She wore them to breakfast, but removed them before luncheon. She said nothing of them afterward. I only discovered them missing this morning when polishing her dressing table. A thoughtful silence filled the room. Hastings spoke softly. So, the cufflinks disappeared sometime between breakfast and this morning. The clock hands vanished. Before that, and the letter arrived first. Someone orchestrated these acts in rapid succession. Poirot nodded, eyes alight. Exactement, Monsieur Finnegan. Your careful cleaning of Sir Edmund's blotter may impede our inquiry into the courier's identity. Yet your recollection of Mr. Morley's presence near the study is vital. We must verify whether he carried such a letter. or was seeking additional documents. Finnegan bowed. "I shall provide any assistance, monsieur. I will refrain from cleaning or altering anything further." As Poirot and Hastings left the pantry, Hastings whispered, "So Morley loitered near the study. A forged letter pressured Sir Edmund, and the cufflinks vanished soon after. The timeline tightens." Poirot's expressive eyes gleamed. "Indeed, Hastings. The butler's observations reveal that the scheme required coordination. The forger's courier, Morley's interference, and a subsequent theft of heirloom silver. We must now decipher Mr. Bright's role. Perhaps he engaged Morley to set Sir Edmund on edge, making it easier to manipulate him." Hastings nodded. "Then our next step is to trace this William Bright, find his London address, interview him, and uncover his motive." Poirot inclined his head. "Let us proceed without delay. The little grey cells have work to do, and every second counts before the trail grows cold." Together they strode toward the library to map out their journey to London, determined to reveal the mastermind behind the silent thefts and the burden the butler carried alone. Chapter 8. Shadows in London. The following morning, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings departed Surrey by train, bound for London. As the locomotive hissed out of the station, Poirot gazed thoughtfully across the English countryside. "Hastings, there is much to consider. William Bright's forged letter, Mr. Morley's dubious ledger, and the missing silver artefacts. In London we shall find answers." Hastings settled into his seat, straightening his jacket. "Do you believe Bright orchestrated this entire affair?" he asked. Poirot tapped his fingers lightly. "It is possible, but I suspect he had collaborators. We must uncover his motives and connections before drawing conclusions." Upon arrival at Paddington Station, the two men took a hansom cab through bustling streets toward a modest building in Bloomsbury. The hotel where Mr. Bright lodged was unassuming, a narrow facade of fading brick and peeling paint. Inside, the lobby was quiet, with a solitary clerk at the desk. Poirot produced a visiting card from his pocket. "We seek Mr. William Bright. Kindly inform him that Monsieur Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings are here to see him on urgent business." The clerk raised an eyebrow but dialed a rotary telephone. A moment later, he nodded and informed them that Mr. Bright would receive them in his sitting room. Hastings accompanied Poirot up a creaking staircase to the second floor. The corridor was narrow, and a faint odour of musty paper drifted through the air. They stopped before a door marked W. Bright, Attorney at Law. Poirot rapped gently, then entered when the door opened. Mr. Bright sat behind a dark oak desk, cluttered with legal files, maps of estates, and half-empty ink bottles. He was a slender man with sharp features, keen grey eyes, and a neatly trimmed beard. His attire was conservative, dark suit, vest, and a plain black tie. Yet his manner was guarded, lips pressed together as he studied his visitors. "Good afternoon, monsieur," Bright greeted, rising. "I received word that you wished to see me." Poirot inclined his head. "Indeed, monsieur. I wish to discuss the letter you sent to Sir Edmund Langley." Bright's expression flickered. "That letter was strictly a professional request. My client instructed me to inquire about the clock's condition as it pertained to the settlement of a trust. I only followed orders." Hastings leaned forward. "And who might that client be?" Bright hesitated, looking from Poirot to Hastings. I am bound by confidentiality. I cannot reveal my client's identity. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Your letter implied urgency. You mentioned clauses in Sir Edmund's will contingent upon the clock's working order. That knowledge could only come from someone intimately aware of the family's affairs. Did you not consider the potential distress such a letter could cause? Bright's lips twitched. I am a solicitor. I convey information, not responsibility, for its interpretation. Sir Edmund is a man of affairs. He understood the implications. Poirot's brow lifted, yet a forged seal was used to deliver your letter. Tell me, monsieur, did you seal it personally? Bright's face grew stern. No, that was handled by my clerk, Mr. Pritchard, in a moment of haste. If any irregularity occurred, I was not aware. Very well, Poirot responded softly. Nevertheless, the letter prompted unrest, and shortly thereafter the clock hands vanished. If your client truly intended a simple inquiry, why resort to forgery? Bright's eyes darted away momentarily. He stood abruptly. I see this. Conversation is going nowhere. I must insist you refrain from accusing me. Hastings exchanged a look with Poirot. We merely seek the truth, monsieur, Hastings said gently. We believe you may know more than you admit. Bright paced the room, pausing by a tall window overlooking the street. Sir Edmund's estate is complex, he murmured. My client, whom I cannot name, stood to benefit if the clock were devalued. But if you accuse me of collusion, you lack proof. Poirot folded his hands. Proof is what we seek. I have learned that you met with Mr. Morley in private at the Langley estate. Can you confirm this? Bright's face hardened. My meetings with Mr. Morley were professional. Joint consultations regarding the trust. That is all. Poirot gently pressed on. And what of Lady Beatrice's missing cufflinks? They too are silver. Is it mere coincidence that your client's counsel coincides with multiple silver thefts? Bright turned abruptly, facing them. Cufflinks have nothing to do with me. I explore legal matters. I do not involve myself in theft. He glared at Poirot. You'll have to excuse me. I have pressing business. As Bright strode toward a side door, he halted and glanced back. Poirot observed a flicker of reluctance in Bright's eyes before the door closed behind him. Hastings exhaled in relief. He's hiding something, Hastings whispered. But what? Poirot tapped his chin thoughtfully. We know he arranged the forged letter, yet claims ignorance of further scheming. We must find Mr. Pritchard, his clerk, who may reveal the client's identity and confirm instructions surrounding the letter. Hastings nodded. Shall we try to locate this Pritchard? Poirot's expression brightened. Yes, but first let us examine the seal used on the letter. We retrieved wax remnants from Sir Edmund's blotter. Perhaps it matches a stamp held by Mr. Bright's office. They retraced their steps through the narrow corridors to the clerk's desk. The receptionist sat reading a newspaper. Poirot approached politely. Pardon me, madame. I require access to your office's seal. This is of great importance to an ongoing inquiry. The clerk eyed Poirot's immaculate attire and authoritative bearing. After a moment of silent evaluation, she closed her newspaper and pointed down the hall. Second office to your left. Mr. Pritchard handles the seals. Poirot's lips curved. Merci beaucoup. Hastings followed as Poirot strode confidently toward their next destination. As they passed beneath the low ceiling, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, be cautious. Bright's warnings suggest he may escalate matters if pressed too suddenly." Poirot nodded. "Agreed, Hastings, but we must press on. The little grey cells demand clarity. Only then will we illuminate the shadows cast over the Langley family's legacy." Together, they reached the door to Mr. Pritchard's office, ready to confront the clerk and unmask the hidden client who ignited this web of deceit. Chapter 9. The Clerk's Conscience. In the narrow corridor of the Bloomsbury office building, Poirot and Hastings paused before a polished oak door bearing a small nameplate, "W. Pritchard, Solicitor's Clerk." Poirot took a deep breath, summoning his most persuasive demeanour. "Captain Hastings," he murmured, "it is important that we approach this interview with tact. The clerk may fear retribution if he reveals his master's secrets." Hastings nodded, his expression grave. Poirot rapped gently on the door. A moment later, a young man's voice called, "Come in." Poirot and Hastings entered. Mr. William Pritchard sat behind a cluttered desk, quill poised above parchment. He was a slender youth, pale and nervous, with spectacles perched on his nose and ink smudges staining his cuffs. He looked up, startled, as the detective and his companion approached. "Mr. Pritchard," Poirot began smoothly, "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings. We have questions regarding a letter bearing your seal, delivered to Sir Edmund Langley of Surrey." The clerk's eyes widened. He set down his quill, trembling. I was expecting someone. I did seal that letter, monsieur, but I was only following Mr. Bright's instructions." Poirot inclined his head. "Of course. Yet, if I might ask, to whom did Mr. Bright attribute the cost of producing the letter and seal? It mentioned urgent legal business, but the seal itself appeared hastily forged." Pritchard swallowed. "It was indeed a genuine seal, imported from Geneva. Mr. Bright provided it to me. He instructed that the letter be stamped without delay. I did not question him further." Hastings leaned forward, but the seal on Sir Edmund's blotter did not match exactly. It bore a flaw, suggesting either a counterfeit or one that was worn. "Did you notice anything unusual about the seal's condition?" Pritchard clasped his hands. "The seal Mr. Bright gave me was chipped on one corner. He said we would replace it soon, but needed to dispatch the letter immediately. The wax he supplied was dark red, mixed with a metallic shine." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You recall the wax residue found on Sir Edmund's blotter? It was dark and metallic, suggestive of an uncommon alloy. This confirms that your office processed that correspondence. Now, does Mr. Bright's client fear the clock's working order, or is this a ruse for her larger scheme?" The clerk's legs trembled. He glanced at Hastings, then returned his gaze to Poirot. I should not speak of my employer's affairs, but I cannot live with this guilt. Will you promise me discretion if I speak truthfully?" Poirot smiled gently. "You have our solemn word. Your honesty will be treated with respect and confidentiality." Pritchard exhaled. "Very well. Mr. Bright was approached by a gentleman named Mr. Ambrose Carraway. He represents a group of investors who, they wished to acquire the Langley estate lands cheaply. They planned to depreciate any assets tied to the inheritance. The clock, being emblematic of the family heritage and holding sentimental value, was targeted. If it fell into disrepair, Sir Edmund might be compelled to liquidate properties. Hastings' brow furrowed. And Mr. Morley? Was he involved in this? The clerk nodded, shoulders slumping. Yes, Mr. Morley was colluding. Mr. Carroway offered him a handsome retainer to ensure that legal documents, such as the trust clauses, would push Sir Edmund toward a sale. Morley agreed, partly to cover his own debts. He fabricated entries in Sir Edmund's ledgers to disguise what he was doing. Poirot clasped his hands. So the removal of the gear was to simulate irreparable damage, and this letter was meant to unsettle the baronet. But the actual removal of the clock hands, was that Carroway's doing or Morley's? Pritchard bit his lip. I did not witness it myself. But Mr. Carroway sent a hired hand, a man named Dalton, to fetch the hands under cover of darkness. He believed the silver could be sold on the continental market for a tidy sum. He did not expect that Sir Edmund's repairman, Mr. Vaughan, would return before completion. Dalton fled when he heard footsteps. Hastings whistled softly. That explains the footprints in the dew. But why target Lady Beatrice's cufflinks? Pritchard rubbed his temples. Cufflinks were a distraction. They wanted every silver, heirloom possible, so the family would feel overwhelmed and uncertain. It served Carroway's interests, making Sir Edmund focus on petty losses instead of safeguarding his estate. They believed fear and confusion would lead to rash decisions. Poirot leaned back, considering. And the silver scrapings. Did you know that Carroway had engaged a fence in London to liquidate these items? Pritchard nodded, a haunted expression. 2 days after the letter, Carroway visited our offices, instructing me to prepare another missive, demanding an appraisal of the estate's valuables. But I refused. My conscience would not permit further dishonesty. He threatened me, but I managed to hide this letter in my desk. I feared for my safety. Poirot rose, placing a comforting hand on the clerk's shoulder. You have acted with great courage, Monsieur Pritchard. Your information is invaluable. We shall ensure that Carroway and his associates are brought to justice, and Mr. Morley's duplicity is exposed. Now, will you accompany us to the nearest magistrate's office to provide a formal statement? Pritchard's eyes glistened with relief. Yes, monsieur. I will come with you. As Poirot and Hastings guided the clerk through the labyrinthine corridors toward the street, a sense of triumph stirred in their hearts. The web of deceit had been unravelled further, and the shadows over the Langley legacy would at last recede. Chapter 10. Reckoning and Restoration. The sun had barely risen when Poirot and Hastings returned to Surrey by early train, accompanied by Mr. Pritchard. The air was crisp and carried the distant scent of wildflowers. From the station platform, Hastings hailed a cab to Langley Manor. As they crossed the threshold of the grand entrance, they found Sir Edmund pacing the hallway, Lady Beatrice waiting anxiously nearby, and Mr. Finnegan standing by with solemn regard. Morley, in contrast, hovered in the background, eyes shifty. "Hercule Poirot, you have returned," Sir Edmund exclaimed, relief and apprehension mingling in his voice. "Have you learned the truth?" Poirot offered a reassuring nod. "Indeed, Sir Edmund. With the invaluable assistance of Mr. Pritchard, we have unravelled the conspiracy that led to the theft of your clock hands, Lady Beatrice's cufflinks, and your sister's watch. Would you care to hear the details here before we set things right?" Sir Edmund gestured to the drawing-room, where thick Persian rugs muffled their footsteps. They seated themselves around a coffee table. Beatrice held her sister's silver watch-clasp, eyes bright with concern. Sir Edmund folded his arms tightly, awaiting the verdict. Poirot began. Mr. Carroway, Ambrose Carroway, has orchestrated this scheme along with your solicitor, Mr. Morley. Carroway represents a group of investors aiming to depress the value of the Langley estate by creating fear and confusion. He engaged Mr. Morley to insert false entries in your financial ledgers, suggesting that unrecoverable debts threatened your holdings. Meanwhile, Carroway sent a forged letter under Mr. Bright's seal to unsettle you further. The removal of the clock hands and the gear tampering were meant to simulate irreparable damage, and the removal of silver heirlooms served as further intimidation. Sir Edmund's face paled. But how did you confirm Carroway's involvement? Poirot smiled, tipping an imaginary hat. Through Mr. Pritchard, Carroway's own clerk. Pritchard confessed that Carroway supplied the forged seal, the red wax mixture, and the instructions to remove the clock's components under cover of darkness. Pritchard also revealed that a hired hand named Dalton was dispatched to take the clock hands for sale on the continent. Fortunately, Dalton fled when Mr. Vaughan returned unexpectedly, leaving behind footprints and the gear. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. So, our family heirlooms were targeted simply for financial gain, and Morley, my father, trusted him. Hastings spoke gently. Morley's deceit runs deep. He falsified entries so that Carroway's investors could claim grounds to force a sale. However, you, Sir Edmund, can now act to prevent the sale, since the evidence of fraud is before us. Sir Edmund exhaled, shaken but resolute. I will ensure Carroway and Morley face justice. But what of the clock? Can its hands be restored? Poirot rose, gesturing for them to follow. Yes, we shall retrieve the clock's components. First, we must visit Mr. Vaughan's workshop. They journeyed to the horologist's modest building, where Mr. Vaughan awaited with measured optimism. Poirot presented the small silver gear that had been in Carroway's possession. Monsieur Vaughan, this is the original gear from Sir Edmund's clock. We intend its restoration. Vaughan's eyes softened. I was saddened when I heard of the theft. I have a replacement set of hands prepared, fashioned precisely to match the original design. With this gear, I can complete the repair. They guided Vaughan to the courtyard clock. He examined the mechanism carefully, fitting the recovered gear into its place, and then attaching the new silver and black steel hands. Nearby, Hastings held Lady Beatrice's missing cufflinks and her sister's returned watch, both recovered from a London fence, whom Poirot and Hastings confronted yesterday. The fence, frightened by their approach, surrendered the items in exchange for leniency. Vaughan wound the mechanism meticulously. Poirot and Hastings stepped back as the clock's pendulum swung in a measured arc. With a gentle click, the recreated hands aligned at midnight. A clear, resonant chime echoed through the courtyard. Sir Edmund, Beatrice, and Finnegan watched, in awe. My grandfather would be proud, Sir Edmund murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He touched the clock's mahogany frame. Thank you, Monsieur Vaughan, and thank you, Poirot. Poirot inclined his head. It is my pleasure. The clock now stands restored, and the justice is at hand. As for Carroway and Morley, I have arranged for the local constabulary to apprehend them upon their arrival in Surrey at midday. Hastings stepped forward. I counsel caution. Carroway may seek to flee once he learns the clock is repaired. It is imperative we contact the magistrate immediately. Sir Edmund nodded, and Finnegan dispatched a message to the constable stationed at the manor gates. Meanwhile, Lady Beatrice retrieved the silver cufflinks from Hastings, fastening them to her wrist as if reclaiming a part of her identity. "I feel whole once more," she said, her voice trembling but determined. Moments later, a commotion stirred by the entrance gate announced Carroway's arrival, accompanied by Mr. Morley, who had returned under the pretence of discussing further legal matters. They stepped into the courtyard, unaware that constables awaited to take them into custody. Poirot and Sir Edmund confronted them. "You are under arrest, Mr. Carroway," the officer declared, "and you as well, Mr. Morley, for conspiracy to commit fraud and theft." Carroway's face drained of colour. Morley stammered, anger and fear dancing across his features. They were escorted away, flanked by uniformed officers. Sir Edmund watched them go, relief tempered by sorrow at the betrayal by a trusted friend. Once the courtyard fell silent, Poirot placed a hand on Sir Edmund's shoulder. "Rest assured, sir, that justice has been served. Your family's honour is restored." Beatrice embraced her father's arm. Hastings gave Poirot an approving nod. "Another case closed, mon ami." Poirot brushed imaginary dust from his coat, eyes alight. "Indeed, the balance of time has been restored, the little grey cells prevailed, and the Langley legacy remains intact." As they gazed upon the grandfather clock, its hands now circling steadily, an aura of peace settled over the manor. The puzzle of the clock without hands had found its solution, and the Langley family could look to the future with confidence once more. Chapter 11. Echoes of Time. The morning sun cast long, slender rays across the Langley estate as Sir Edmund, Langley and Lady Beatrice stood once more before the restored clock. Its polished mahogany gleamed in the courtyard light, and the newly fitted hands swept smoothly across the face. Each chime resonated through their hearts, signifying not only the passage of hours, but the resilience of family. Behind them, Mr. Finnegan stood at attention, pride tempered by humility, while Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot observed in discreet silence. Lady Beatrice brushed a stray lock of auburn hair from her forehead and smiled wistfully. "Father, do you feel as though a burden has lifted from our shoulders?" she asked, voice soft but resolute. Sir Edmund placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Indeed, my dear, when the clock fell silent, I feared it would mark the end of our legacy. But now, with its melody restored, I believe our family's future is as secure as ever." He paused, gazing at the intricate gears visible through the glass panel. "I am grateful to you, Monsieur Poirot, and to all who aided in recovering our heirlooms." Poirot inclined his head, moustaches twitching in satisfaction. "Sir Edmund, the little grey cells work best when guided by a family's love and loyalty. The clock's restoration is more than mechanical. It symbolizes trust regained." He turned to Hastings. "And, Captain, remember how the newspaper reported Carroway's accomplices were apprehended yesterday evening? The local magistrate commended our efforts." Hastings smiled and tipped his hat. "Indeed, I overheard the constable at the gate saying that Carraway's investors were disgruntled, but ultimately grateful that Sir Edmund's estate remained intact. He crossed his arms, surveying the courtyard. Now that the immediate crisis has passed, what will their next steps be? Sir Edmund folded his hands behind his back. I shall convene a council to review the estate's affairs. With Morley disbarred and Carraway's scheme exposed, I intend to restructure the trust to protect our lands from external meddling. Lady Beatrice will assist me in reorganizing the family records to ensure transparency. Beatrice nodded firmly. Sir Edmund, I will catalogue every heirloom, every document, and prepare a ledger that cannot be tampered with. Finnegan will oversee the day-to-day operations. We shall be vigilant. She exchanged a glance with the butler, who inclined his head in solemn agreement. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. A prudent measure. And to safeguard against future deceit, I recommend instituting regular audits by a neutral party. One unfamiliar with Langley traditions, to ensure no anomalies arise. He offered his gloved hand as though presenting a gift. May I propose Mr. Derbyshire, a gentleman of impeccable character whom I have consulted before. He would heed your family's best interests. Sir Edmund smiled. Excellent suggestion. I shall write to him at once. He turned to Poirot. Hercule, your counsel has proven invaluable. When might we expect your next visit? Poirot tapped his chin lightly. Ah, Sir Edmund, I am soon to depart for Paris, but my thoughts shall remain with the Langley family. Should you require my assistance in the future, a single letter delivered to Brussels will direct me to you. Beatrice's eyes glistened with gratitude. You have given us more than a repaired clock. You have restored our faith in one another. She inclined her head. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. With a final nod, Poirot turned to Hastings. Captain, shall we depart? Hastings extended his arm, guiding Poirot toward the side gate. As they walked away, the clock struck the hour. A clear, resonant note that lingered in the crisp air. Moments later, Sir Edmund and Lady Beatrice stood alone in the courtyard. The clock faced them as a sentinel of their heritage, its steady rhythm affirming that time, though ever fleeting, could also mend wounds. Finnegan joined them, carrying a small silver box containing the recovered cufflinks. He presented them with a flourish. Your ladyship, he said, these cufflinks are now safely returned to your care, along with the watch and other heirlooms. I have arranged for secure display cases to protect them. Beatrice smiled, lifting the silver cufflinks and fastening them at her wrists. Thank you, Finnegan. Your loyalty has been a constant blessing. She reached for her father's hand. Father, let us honour this day by gathering our closest friends and sharing a meal beneath the elms. We shall celebrate not only the clock's return, but the unity that time itself cannot erode. Sir Edmund looked to the horizon, where fields of green stretched toward the distant hills. Yes, Beatrice, let us commemorate the bonds that endure, even when shadows intrude, for as long as we stand together, the echoes of time shall remind us of our strength. And so, beneath the watchful face of the grandfather clock, the Langley family stepped forward into a future brightened by restored heritage and unbroken trust. As the chimes faded into the gentle hum of the estate, the promise of new beginnings unfolded, carried on the steady hands that once again measured every precious moment. Chapter 12. The Missing Codicil. 2 days after Carraway and Morley's arrest, the Langley estate had settled into a calm that almost felt unfamiliar. Sir Edmund conducted meetings in his study, Lady Beatrice catalogued heirlooms, and Mr. Finnegan oversaw the household with a renewed sense of purpose. In the late morning, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings sat in the drawing-room, enjoying a quiet cup of tea. The rhythm of daily life had resumed, yet between sips, Poirot's little grey cells already sought the next puzzle. "Captain," Poirot murmured, setting down his cup, "there remains one matter unexamined. The codicil to Sir Edmund's will, mentioned only in passing by Mr. Carraway. If such a document exists, it could alter the disposition of the estate." Hastings frowned, and I recall Carraway spoke of a codicil that bequeathed certain lands to an unnamed beneficiary if the clock were irreparable. He shivered slightly at the memory. We assumed it was part of Carraway's deceit, but perhaps there is truth buried within. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Exactement. I propose we consult Sir Edmund directly to ascertain if he possesses any knowledge of this codicil. If it exists, its absence would present yet another layer of mystery." Hastings rose and stretched. "Then let us present ourselves to Sir Edmund without delay." They found Sir Edmund in his study, poring over ledgers by the fire. When Poirot and Hastings entered, he looked up with a cordial though weary smile. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, how may I assist you today?" Poirot inclined his head. "Sir Edmund, forgive our intrusion, but we must inquire after the codicil mentioned by William Pritchard. Does such an addendum to your will exist?" Sir Edmund's face darkened. He frowned, leaning back in his armchair. "A codicil? I do not recall any such document. I drafted my will some years ago, leaving the estate equally to Beatrice and me for life, with no further conditions attached. But Carraway insisted that I had signed a codicil referring to the clock." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. Carraway was known to fabricate documents, but we must confirm whether a codicil was ever executed. Have you checked your personal safe or with your solicitor? Sir Edmund sighed. I entrusted the original will and any codicils to Mr. Morley for safekeeping. Alas, his arrest may have compromised those documents. He slid a chair forward. I will show you the safe, Monsieur Poirot, but if Morley removed or destroyed any codicil, we may be at a loss. Poirot stood and followed Sir Edmund to a small wall safe concealed behind a portrait of the first Baronet Langley. Sir Edmund unlocked it, revealing several sealed envelopes and a bound volume labelled Residue of Will and Codicils. He handed the volume to Hastings, who opened it reverently. Flipping through the pages, his gaze sharpened. Monsieur Poirot, there is indeed a missing page between sections 3 and 4, he observed, pointing to a gap with only binding threads visible. The page must have been removed deliberately. Sir Edmund's voice shook. Then Carraway's words were not entirely false. Morley may have taken the codicil as leverage, perhaps to keep it from falling into Carraway's hands, or to negotiate his own benefit. He sank into a velvet chair. What shall we do now? Poirot tapped his chin. We need to ascertain the contents of the missing codicil. If it bequeathed lands to another party, knowing that party's identity is crucial, I propose a twofold approach. First, interview Mr. Pritchard to determine whether he recalls details of that codicil when Carraway instructed him. Second, search Morley's rooms for any trace of the page. Hastings nodded. I will accompany you to Pritchard's lodgings in the city later today. Meanwhile, you may oversee the search of Morley's quarters here. Sir Edmund inclined, his head gravely. Very well. I authorize you to proceed. Poirot offered a reassuring smile. Trust that the little grey cells will illuminate this shadow as they have before. With that, Poirot and Sir Edmund left Morley's quarters under Mr. Finnegan's watchful eye, while Hastings prepared to depart with Poirot for London. Late afternoon found Poirot and Hastings in Pritchard's modest lodgings off Tottenham Court Road. The clerk greeted them at the door, pale but resolute. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, how may I be of service? Poirot gestured to a small table where Pritchard poured tea. Monsieur, we seek any recollection you have regarding the codicil to Sir Edmund's will. Mr. Carraway insisted it existed. When you sealed that will for Mr. Morley, did you note any particular phrasing or beneficiary? Pritchard's hand trembled as he set down the teacup. He closed his eyes, recalling the moment. Yes, I remember now. When I stapled the codicil into the volume, it referenced a Mrs. Evelyn Sutton, Sir Edmund's cousin from Ireland. She was to inherit the Clockhouse estate if the clock ceased functioning. The wording was explicit, though brief. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Evelyn Sutton. Then she stands to inherit valuable lands, if the codicil is genuine. Do you recall who drafted that page? Was it Mr. Morley, or did Sir Edmund sign it in person? Pritchard thought deeply. I believe Mr. Morley wrote it under Sir Edmund's direction some years ago. Sir Edmund signed the page in his handwriting, but I do not recall Sir Edmund ever mentioning Mrs. Sutton. Indeed, I cared not to question it at the time. Hastings jotted notes. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Your recollection is most helpful. Poirot rose. One more thing, monsieur. Did Mr. Carraway or Mr. Morley ever speak of Mrs. Sutton's whereabouts, or how to contact her? Clark hesitated. Mr. Carraway spoke of her estate in Dublin, but offered no correspondence. Morley once mentioned that she was estranged from Sir Edmund, and he imagined her living quietly in Ireland. He paused. That is all I recall. Poirot inclined his head respectfully. Merci, monsieur. You have provided a key piece to this puzzle. As they departed Pritchard's lodging, Hastings whispered, Evelyn Sutton. Perhaps she holds the missing codicil page, or at least testimony to its authenticity. Poirot's lips curled. Precisely, Hastings. Our next step is to verify whether Mrs. Sutton is aware of the codicil and determine its legal standing. We must also locate the physical page. It may yet remain hidden in Morley's rooms here, at Langley. Hastings nodded. Then let's return at once. Back at Langley Manor, Poirot and Hastings reconvened with Sir Edmund and Lady Beatrice. Poirot revealed their findings. Mrs. Evelyn Sutton is the beneficiary of the codicil, but absent from the will's binding. To validate it, we need her confirmation and, if possible, the missing page. I recommend we dispatch an inquiry to Dublin, and in the interim search Mr. Morley's quarters thoroughly for any hint. Sir Edmund clasped his hands. Do as you must. I will await word on Mrs. Sutton. Lady Beatrice added, I will prepare our correspondence to Mrs. Sutton's solicitors, including a copy of the will minus the missing page, so that she may confirm its authenticity. As evening shadows lengthened, Poirot and Hastings examined. Morley's quarters once more. Hastings opened a desk drawer while Poirot surveyed the carpet and walls for concealed compartments. In a false bottom of a writing box, Hastings found a folded piece of vellum, the very codicil page. Its edges bore Sir Edmund's signature and Evelyn Sutton's name. Poirot held it gently, inspecting the elegant handwriting. "Voilà, Hastings! The missing codicil is found." He presented it to Hastings. "With this, we can restore the will to its rightful form and ensure that Mrs. Sutton's share is recognized. The last piece falls into place." Hastings beamed. "Another mystery solved, mon ami." Poirot smiled, placing the codicil page within his jacket. "Indeed, the legacy of Langley shall now rest on a foundation of truth, unmarred by deceit." As lantern light flickered in the corridor, they prepared to reunite the family with this final revelation, restoring not only paper and ink, but the very bonds of kinship that time itself could not erode. Chapter 13. The Irish heiress. Late that morning, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings gathered in the Langley drawing-room with Sir Edmund and Lady Beatrice. The codicil page, carefully unrolled on the marble-topped table, lay between them like a bridge across a silent gulf. Poirot inclined his head toward Lady Beatrice. "Madame, the missing codicil confirms that Mrs. Evelyn Sutton stands as co-heir to the Clockhouse estate should the clock ever cease to function. We must verify her identity and obtain her consent before finalizing Sir Edmund's will." Lady Beatrice glanced at her father. "Father, I will draft a formal letter to Mrs. Sutton's attorneys in Dublin at once. Together we shall send this codicil and request her instructions." Sir Edmund nodded firmly. "Do so, Beatrice. Meanwhile, Poirot, I trust you to oversee any further inquiries here." With a gentle smile, Poirot rose. "Merci, Sir Edmund. Captain Hastings, if you would join me, I wish to visit Mr. Finnegan. There are household matters that require attention regarding the codicil's security until Mrs. Sutton's reply arrives." Hastings followed Poirot through the corridor to the butler's pantry, where Mr. Finnegan waited with immaculately polished silver trays and a quiet but expectant expression. Poirot bowed. "Monsieur Finnegan, a codicil page has been recovered from Mr. Morley's quarters. It must remain under strict guard until legal formalities with Mrs. Sutton are complete. Can you arrange secure storage?" Finnegan inclined his head solemnly. "Of course, monsieur. I will place it in the family safe under 2 independent keys, one held by Sir Edmund, the other by myself. No one may access it without express instruction." Poirot's eyes gleamed with approval. "Très bien. Your caution honours the Langley legacy. Additionally, please inform the household staff that any visitors from Ireland must be reported immediately. We anticipate Mrs. Sutton or an emissary might arrive personally." Finnegan nodded and retreated to see his instructions carried out. Hastings watched Poirot thoughtfully. "Mon ami, with the codicil secured, our focus must shift to locating Mrs. Sutton. Do you believe she will travel personally or send a representative?" Poirot tapped his fingers slowly. "Her absence from family affairs suggests she might delegate. Yet, given the estate's significance, it is prudent to prepare for her arrival. We should instruct Sir Edmund to ready suitable accommodations and reception." Back in the drawing-room, Sir Edmund and Beatrice observed Poirot's return. Poirot addressed Sir Edmund. "Monsieur, the codicil is secured. Lady Beatrice will dispatch correspondence this afternoon." Once Mrs. Sutton's instructions arrive, you may proceed to reinstate the codicil legally." Sir Edmund exhaled with relief. "Thank you, Hercule. Your unerring diligence continues to amaze me." Later that afternoon, Hastings joined Poirot in reviewing the final draft of Lady Beatrice's letter to Dublin solicitors. They sealed the envelope and entrusted it to the local postmaster, ensuring registered delivery. Hastings closed the letter pouch. "It is done. Now, we wait." That evening, as twilight settled over the estate, Poirot lingered alone in the courtyard before the restored clock. The hands moved steadily, marking each second like a heartbeat. He placed a gloved hand on the polished wood. "The puzzle unfolds, not only here, but across the sea," he murmured. A gentle breeze stirred the bell rope, producing a soft chime that resonated through the still air. The clock's melody spoke of time healed and secrets unveiled, a serenade to Langley's enduring lineage. In the weeks that followed, the household settled into a new routine. Lady Beatrice catalogued each recovered heirloom in meticulous ledgers. Mr. Finnegan oversaw enhanced security measures, and Sir Edmund resumed his council meetings to restructure the trust. Poirot and Hastings continued to visit occasionally, adding touches of counsel, arranging for Mr. Derbyshire's audits, and guiding Sir Edmund on drafting more robust legal safeguards. 2 weeks later, a foreign postmark arrived on a thin envelope addressed to Sir Edmund. With poised excitement, Lady Beatrice opened it and scanned its contents. Sir Edmund read aloud one line. "Obliged to confirm authenticity of codicil. It is genuine." The letter, signed by Mrs. Evelyn Sutton's Dublin attorney, included a return passage signed by Mrs. Sutton herself. She expressed gratitude and declared her intention to visit Surrey to meet her cousin behind the clock that united them. That Sunday morning, Poirot and Hastings found themselves in the drawing-room when a carriage clattered up the gravel drive. Through the window, they saw a stately woman descend, tall, with pale hair swept into a chignon, wearing a tailored grey travelling suit. Lady Beatrice rushed to the front hall to greet her, while Sir Edmund and Mr. Finnegan waited with quiet dignity. Poirot and Hastings remained on the staircase, observing as Evelyn Sutton embraced her cousin and inquired after the clock's condition. From his vantage point, Hastings whispered, "Mon ami, the web of deceit has been replaced by reconciliation. See how Mrs. Sutton's expression brightens at the sight of the clock's hands." Poirot smiled, his moustaches quivering. "Très bien. The harmony of the Langley legacy is restored. Time, though ever moving forward, now binds these cousins. In unity, below, cousins Langley exchanged warm words, and Hastings stepped forward. Mrs. Sutton, welcome to Langley Manor. My name is Captain Hastings, and this is Monsieur Poirot. We are honoured that you have come." Evelyn Sutton turned and offered a gentle nod. "Thank you. I am eager to learn of our shared heritage." They descended. Poirot allowed himself a contented sigh. The puzzle of the clock without hands has found its true resolution, not only by returning its mechanism to motion, but by weaving together the strands of family separated by years. Now at last, time is theirs to share. Chapter 14. Reunion. Beneath the clock Evelyn Sutton stood on the threshold of Langley Manor, her gaze drawn immediately to the restored grandfather clock in the courtyard. The morning light caught the silver hands as they moved in their steady, measured rhythm. For a moment, she felt as though time itself was welcoming her back to a family she had not seen in years. Her heart fluttered as she descended the steps, her grey travelling suit brushing softly against the gravel. Sir Edmund Langley awaited her arrival on the polished marble floor of the entrance hall. His face, lined with the experience of many years, brightened at the sight of his cousin. He bowed deeply, extending his hand. "Mrs. Sutton, welcome to Langley Manor at last." Evelyn stepped forward, accepting his hand with warmth. "Thank you, Cousin Edmund. I have longed to see this estate and understand the heritage I inherited." Lady Beatrice joined them, her auburn hair glinting like burnished copper in the morning sun. "Evelyn, it is a joy to meet you in person. I have so much to show you." Her voice trembled slightly with emotion. Beatrice led Evelyn toward the drawing-room, where familial portraits hung like silent witnesses to generations past. Each painting captured a Langley ancestor standing proudly beside the same clock that now held such significance. As Evelyn traced their faces with her eyes, she felt a surge of belonging mingle with a subtle pang of regret for her years in Ireland. Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot entered the drawing-room moments later. Hastings greeted Evelyn with a nod and offered his hand. "Mrs. Sutton, I am Captain Hastings. My friend Hercule Poirot and I assisted in restoring the clock and confirming your rightful inheritance." Evelyn smiled gratefully. "I must thank you both. Your efforts have reunited the family and restored a part of my past I feared lost forever." Poirot inclined his head, his moustaches twitching with delight. "Madam, it was our distinct pleasure. The little grey cells are satisfied that justice prevails, and that the bonds of family have been renewed." He offered her a delicate bow. Evelyn's eyes softened as she regarded him. "You and Captain Hastings have given me a precious gift, not only a legally recognised inheritance, but the knowledge that I am connected to Langley once more." Beatrice guided Evelyn to a tall window overlooking the courtyard, where the clock's gentle chime continued to mark each passing moment. "Come, Evelyn, let me show you the gardens and the rose arbour Father tended in his youth." Evelyn followed, her skirts swishing lightly against the polished oak floor. As they stepped into the courtyard, the scent of lavender and freshly mown grass enveloped them. Evelyn inhaled deeply, letting the fragrance settle in her senses. For the first time in memory, she felt truly at peace. Sir Edmund joined them, carrying a silver tray with teacups and a porcelain teapot. "We have prepared a small refreshment in the oriel window," he said kindly. "But first, I wish to introduce you to Finnegan, who has cared for every detail of the household during these trying weeks." Finnegan emerged from a side door, bowing with deference. "Mrs. Sutton, it is an honour to welcome you. The house and the clock are once again secure in your family's care." Evelyn inclined her head respectfully. "Thank you, Finnegan. I look forward to working with you." They walked together to the rose arbour, where Mrs. Langley's roses bloomed in a riot of colour. Evelyn gasped at their beauty. "These are magnificent," she whispered. Beatrice smiled. Father chose each rose variety himself. He believed they symbolized endurance and renewal, appropriate for this day. Evelyn knelt to touch a pale pink bloom, its petals soft as silk. "They are perfect." As they sipped tea beneath the oriel window, Poirot observed the cousins' reunion with satisfaction. Hastings leaned forward. "Evelyn, may I ask about your life in Ireland? You mentioned you lived apart from the family." Evelyn set down her teacup and sighed. "I did. After my parents' passing, I stayed on the family land near County Wicklow to manage my mother's affairs. Though I felt distant from Langley, I loved the rolling hills and the sea air. I did not know of the codicil until only recently, when Mr. Pritchard and Monsieur Poirot revealed its existence." She paused. "When I learned that the clock's condition dictated my inheritance, I felt a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Gratitude for restoration, sorrow that my estrangement nearly caused my family, to fracture further." Beatrice reached across the table and clasped Evelyn's hand. "You are our cousin, dear Evelyn, and you have a place here always. Now that you are home, we will ensure that you are included in every aspect of the estate's future." Evelyn's eyes shone with tears. "Thank you, Beatrice. I wish nothing more." Sir Edmund cleared his throat, interrupting gently. "Perhaps we should discuss the estate's management now that the codicil is in effect. There are village lands near the clockhouse that Evelyn will now share with me." He unfurled a detailed map, pointing to parcels of farmland and woodlands. "These fields have always been dear to our family. Together, we can decide how best to preserve them." Evelyn studied the map carefully. "I would love to help, Cousin Edmund. I yearn to understand our heritage and find ways to support the local community, particularly the tenants on these lands." Sir Edmund placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Together, we shall honour our ancestors and ensure Langley remains, a bastion of stability." As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Evelyn felt a warmth spread through her chest. The clock's chime echoed one final time before the hour, a reminder that time, though ever fleeting, had brought her home at last. With her family gathered around, she understood that her new life at Langley Manor was not merely about inheritance or property. It was about forging connections that spanned generations, healing old wounds, and embracing the future with renewed resolve. In that moment, beneath the watchful face of the clock, Evelyn Sutton knew she had found her true place at last. Chapter 15. A Celebration at Langley. The morning air at Langley Manor was filled with anticipation. Servants bustled about, arranging flowers in vases, polishing silver candlesticks, and laying out fine linens on the central dining table in the great hall. A gentle breeze carried the scent of roses from the arbour, where Lady Beatrice and Mrs. Evelyn Sutton had walked the previous evening. Today, the entire household would gather to honour the restored clock and celebrate the family's newfound unity. Sir Edmund descended the grand staircase in a dark morning coat, his gait steady despite weeks of anxiety. In the drawing-room, he paused before the restored grandfather clock, its hands resting exactly at 10 o'clock. He placed a hand against the polished wood, as though reassuring himself of its solidity. Beside him, Captain Hastings straightened his jacket and smiled quietly. "Splendid work, Hastings," Sir Edmund remarked, nodding toward the clock. "Each chime now reminds me that despite our trials, time brings healing." Hastings inclined his head. "Indeed, Sir Edmund. And what better way to demonstrate that than through a family luncheon and gathering of friends?" I hear word that Mr. Derbyshire will arrive this afternoon to discuss the trust audit." "Excellent," Sir Edmund replied. "I look forward to his counsel. But first I wish to see Evelyn and Beatrice." They found Lady Beatrice in the garden, arranging tea on a marble table beneath the rose arbour. Her gown was a gentle shade of lavender, and she greeted Sir Edmund and Hastings with bright eyes. A few yards away, Mrs. Evelyn Sutton admired her pale yellow rose, its petals unfurling with delicate precision. "Cousin Edmund, Captain Hastings," Lady Beatrice called warmly. Evelyn turned and offered a gracious smile. "It is a perfect day for celebration. I cannot thank you enough for your hospitality and kindness." Sir Edmund placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "My dear Evelyn, today belongs to you as much as it does to Beatrice. You and I must stand together at the table later and welcome our guests." Evelyn nodded, her expression earnest. "Of course, uncle. I feel honoured to share this moment." They strolled slowly toward the oriel window, where Mr. Finnegan awaited with silver trays of champagne and crystal flutes. "Your servants have prepared refreshments," Finnegan announced with a courteous bow. Lady Beatrice poured glasses, passing them to Sir Edmund, Evelyn, Hastings, and Finnegan in turn. "To family," Sir Edmund toasted, raising his glass. "To Langley's future." Their glasses chimed lightly as they touched in salute. The soft tinkle echoed faintly, mirroring the clock's melody in the courtyard beyond. As they sipped, a carriage rolled up the gravel drive. Mr. Derbyshire emerged, a distinguished gentleman in his mid-50s with salt-and-pepper hair, and a kindly expression. He carried a leather satchel under his arm. Sir Edmund hurried forward to greet him. "Mr. Derbyshire, welcome," Sir Edmund said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Derbyshire smiled and shook Sir Edmund's hand firmly. "It is my pleasure, sir. I have reviewed the preliminary documents sent from London. This luncheon will be an excellent occasion to discuss the trust and ensure all parties are fully informed." Lady Beatrice and Evelyn joined them beneath the arbour. Hastings introduced Derbyshire to Evelyn. "Mrs. Sutton, this is Mr. Derbyshire, the independent auditor of family trusts." Evelyn bowed slightly. "Mr. Derbyshire, I am grateful you have taken on this responsibility. I wish to understand every detail." Derbyshire nodded. "Rest assured, Mrs. Sutton. Transparency is my priority. We shall proceed in full openness." He glanced around at the manicured lawns. "And now, shall we proceed to the great hall for luncheon?" They ascended the stone steps toward the sunlit hall, where rows of chairs awaited the assembled guests. Among them were local dignitaries: the vicar, the schoolmaster, Miss Trent the maid, and Mr. Vaughan the clockmaker, each wearing an expression of respect. The long mahogany table stood adorned with floral arrangements and silver candelabra, ready for a midday feast. Sir Edmund and his family took their seats at a raised dais at one end. Evelyn sat between Sir Edmund and Lady Beatrice, while Hastings and Derbyshire occupied the seats to their right. The guests began to filter in, taking places according to carefully arranged place cards. Mr. Finnegan signalled to the kitchen staff, who emerged bearing platters of roasted pheasant, seasonal vegetables, and freshly baked bread. As the first course was served, Sir Edmund rose to address the assembled company. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice resonant, "we gather today to celebrate the restoration of our family clock, a treasured heirloom that symbolizes the unity and endurance of the Langley lineage. Recent events have tested our bonds, but through determination, integrity, and the invaluable assistance of our friends, we have emerged stronger." He paused, glancing at Poirot and Hastings seated among the guests. "I extend special thanks to Monsieur Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, whose insights and perseverance guided us through darkness to this bright moment." A ripple of applause echoed through the hall. Poirot rose gracefully, bowing his head, and then returned to his seat. Evelyn felt a surge of pride. As plates were cleared and dessert, an exquisite lemon sorbet, was served. Mr. Derbyshire stood to speak. "Sir Edmund, Lady Beatrice, Mrs. Sutton," he began, "I have reviewed the trust documents, including the codicil. All irregularities have been rectified. Going forward, I will conduct quarterly audits to maintain full transparency. Mrs. Sutton's co-ownership of the Clock House lands is now officially recognized." He produced a folder from his satchel, handing it to Evelyn. "These are copies of the revised trust documents, bearing your signature and that of Sir Edmund. With these in place, the estate is secure." Evelyn took the folder, her eyes bright with emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Derbyshire. I am honoured to co-steward our family lands." A warm murmur of approval swept the hall. Hastings raised his glass in a silent toast, and Sir Edmund encouraged the others to do the same. The guests complied, glasses held high. After luncheon, the company dispersed into smaller groups. In a sunlit corner of the drawing-room, Poirot and Hastings conversed softly. Hastings leaned forward. "Mon ami, the celebration has been a resounding success. The estate is secure, the family united, and the clock restored. Yet do you sense any lingering shadows?" Poirot smiled serenely. "Ah, Hastings, the little grey cells always seek hidden complexities. But today I perceive only harmony. The I trust measures will guard against future schemes. Love and vigilance, these are the true measures of time." They paused as Evelyn approached, flanked by Lady Beatrice. Evelyn extended a small leather-bound book. "Gentlemen, I wish you both to accept this token of gratitude." She opened the book to reveal pages of pressed rose petals collected from the arbour. "These roses bloomed first when Father and I walked here together years ago. I pressed them as a reminder of what matters most, family and memory." Poirot's eyes glistened as he accepted the book. "Madame, this is most thoughtful. The rose preserved in time. How fitting for Langley." Hastings smiled broadly. "Indeed, we shall treasure it always." As the afternoon sunlight waned, the guests bid farewell, leaving the Langley family to enjoy the tranquil remainder of the day. Sir Edmund, Beatrice, Evelyn, Finnegan, Poirot, and Hastings gathered once more before the grandfather clock. Its hands pointed to 4 o'clock, and with a gentle chime, the hour was declared. Sir Edmund placed an arm around both his daughters, Beatrice and Evelyn, and reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment of peaceful celebration. The clock chimed again, a clear measured note that echoed throughout the courtyard, carrying with it the promise that time, when guided by truth and love, would always bind hearts together. Chapter 16. Midnight's Silence. The glow of late afternoon waned into a soft twilight as Langley Manor settled into a tranquil hush. The festivities of the luncheon lingered only in memory. and the servants moved like wraiths through the corridors, extinguishing lamps and drawing curtains to ward off the chill. Sir Edmund retired early to review the day's accounts, while Lady Beatrice and Mrs. Evelyn Sutton spent the evening in the libraries, comparing family histories and planning future charitable works. Captain Hastings took leave to visit a neighbouring family, and even Hercule Poirot departed that night for his London lodgings, having given assurances he would return for the final chapters of the estate's affairs. Consequently, as the heavy, oaken doors were secured, the manor fell into an enveloping silence, broken only by the measured tick of the restored grandfather clock. Evelyn Sutton ascended the wide staircase toward her rooms, carrying a single oil lamp, whose flickering flame cast dancing shadows on the tapestries lining the walls. In each portrait, ancestors gazed down with solemn expressions, as though appraising her worthiness to join their line. Clutching the small leather-bound book of pressed roses she presented earlier that day, Evelyn felt the weight of her new responsibilities. Though she had spent her youth managing her mother's estate in County Wicklow, never had she felt as keenly the gravity of family legacy as she did now. Her room, a spacious chamber on the east wing, was austere yet comforting. A high four-poster bed dominated the space, its velvet curtains parted to reveal crisp linens. A window overlooked the courtyard, and beyond it the great clock loomed as a silent sentinel. Evelyn placed the rosebook upon the writing desk, blew out the lamp, and lit a solitary candle. The wick sputtered and glowed with a warm luminescence. Content to review the day's letters one final time, she arranged parchments neatly upon the desk. A letter from Dublin's law firm bore a silver seal. It contained instructions for transferring her share of the Clockhouse lands and an expression of gratitude for forging reconciliation. By candlelight, Evelyn read the elegant script, then tucked the letter into a drawer where she kept her most cherished documents. Having locked the drawer, she rose to secure the window. The evening air slipped in cold and scented with dew. Outside, the courtyard's cobblestones glistened beneath the moon's glow. The grandfather clock's hand pointed to 11 o'clock. Its chime had just rung. A hush followed, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves along the garden hedges. Evelyn exhaled, her breath forming a soft mist. She turned to extinguish the candle and prepare for bed. Yet, as the flame died, she thought she heard a faint creaking, like the shifting of floorboards in the corridor. In the silence that followed, the candle's dying glow illuminated a thin envelope tucked beneath the window-sill, one she had not noticed earlier. Intrigued, Evelyn retrieved it. The envelope was unsealed, heavy parchment marked with a rough scrawl. For eyes of the Langley heirs alone. Her pulse quickened. She slipped the letter inside her dressing-gown pocket and lit the candle again. Kneeling beside the writing desk, she unfolded the sheet. The ink was dark, seeping slightly into the coarse paper. The letter read, "To the custodians of Langley's time. You have restored the clock's hands, and yet time's course still conceals its truths. Beware the shadows that move in daylight's absence. Not all who appear reconciled are free of malice. Guard well your mother's hopes and your father's trust, for the final hour may chime before you hear its promise." Evelyn's hand trembled. The warning sounded cryptic and ominous. She folded the note and dropped it into her pocket, heart pounding. Was this a message from someone still bent on undermining the Langley family? She considered calling for Mr. Finnegan, but memories of Carraway's threats flickered in her mind. Better to confirm the contents before alarming the household. Tucking the letter safely in a compartment of her writing desk, one hidden beneath a false bottom, she shifted toward the bed. As Evelyn sank under the thick quilts, she resolved not to reveal her discovery until she understood its provenance. Sleep proved elusive. Her thoughts circled the warning like restless moths. In the darkness, the clock's chiming seemed to echo more acutely, each toll carrying the weight of unknown perils. At the stroke of midnight, Evelyn finally drifted into a fitful slumber. Dreams haunted by half-seen shapes gliding through corridors and whispered voices calling her name. Just before dawn, the household stirred as a single lamp glowed again in Evelyn's chamber. She sat at her desk, candle flickering, the letter before her. Determination set her jaw. She would consult Mr. Finnegan at daybreak, and then contact Lady Beatrice and Sir Edmund. Whatever shadow lingered beyond, she would not allow fear to fracture the fragile unity they had fought to restore. Below, in the courtyard, the clock's hands moved towards 6, and with each tick, Evelyn felt the pull of destiny. Time's silent countdown toward revelation. The puzzle of Langley, she realized, was not yet complete. Its final secret lay waiting beneath the veil of midnight silence. Chapter 17. The Shadow Among Us. Before the first hint of dawn, a single lamp flickered in Evelyn Sutton's chamber, its flame casting long, quivering shadows across the polished oak floor. She sat at her writing desk, rereading the cryptic missive she had discovered beneath the windowsill the previous night. Each word, "Beware the shadows that move in daylight's absence," resonated in her mind like an echo from some ancient warning. Determined to share her discovery, she rose, slip of a robe trailing behind, and glanced once more at the grandfather clock through the frost-edged glass. Its hands pointed to 6, and the courtyard lay silent beneath a pale blue sky. Pausing only to extinguish the candle, Evelyn crept from her room into the corridor. The manor was hushed, doors closed, and candles guttering in their sconces. At the foot of the stairs, she found Mr. Finnegan already pacing, his posture rigid, as though awaiting her arrival. He bowed his head in respectful greeting. "Your ladyship, is there something amiss?" His voice was low, concerned. Evelyn held out the folded parchment. "I found this beneath my window at midnight. Please read it." Finnegan's expression sharpened as he carefully unfolded the letter. He ran a gloved finger down the page, lips pursed. "A warning, milady, one full of vague threats. I shall arrange for the household to be on alert immediately." Evelyn nodded, anxieties brimming in her eyes. "I believe we should wake Cousin Beatrice and Uncle Edmund. They must know before the day begins." Finnegan's shoulders tensed. "Very good, milady. I will prepare his lordship's chamber." They paused only for a moment before ascending the stairs together. At the entrance to Sir Edmund's study, Finnegan knocked lightly. A rumble of movement came from within. Then the door opened to reveal Sir Edmund himself, darker beneath the eyes than the day before. Behind him, Lady Beatrice appeared in house robes, her auburn hair dishevelled but her gaze steady. Evelyn stepped forward, presenting the letter. "Uncle Beatrice, read this. I found it this morning." Sir Edmund took the parchment with trembling hands. He read it twice, his face paling. Beatrice leaned over his shoulder, lips pressed together. When Sir Edmund finished, he folded the letter carefully, eyes flicking to Evelyn. "Who could have sent this? Our enemies lie vanquished. Carroway and Morley are imprisoned. What shadow remains?" Beatrice exchanged a troubled glance with Finnegan. Perhaps Carroway's associates. They may seek revenge. Sir Edmund shook his head. "Carroway is behind bars. I cannot imagine any network so bold as to threaten us now. Who else would harbour such malice?" Evelyn swallowed. "I do not know, uncle, but I thought it best you see this at once." She met Beatrice's gaze. "Cousin, might you and I inspect my room for any further clues? Perhaps the letter fell from a hand. That same hand might have left other signs." Beatrice nodded, resolute. "Yes, let us go. Finnegan, please inform the household. No one is to leave this wing until further notice." Finnegan bowed and withdrew. Beatrice placed a reassuring hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Evelyn, we will uncover this together." They entered Evelyn's room, where daylight filtered through the frost-laced window panes. Evelyn retrieved a spare candle and lit it. The desk revealed her correspondence and the drawer where she had concealed the warning. Beatrice moved toward the window, inspecting the sill and the floor beneath. "See here," she said, gesturing to a faint smudge on the polished wood. An irregular fingerprint, dusty and half-smudged. Someone pressed the letter here last night. We must preserve this evidence. Evelyn knelt to examine it. It appears to be the index finger of a right hand, coated in a fine grey ash. Could that be clockmaker's dust, or something else? Entirely? Beatrice's brow furrowed. Perhaps it is soot from the lantern. The corridors were lit only by lamps last night. She looked at Evelyn's bedding, pushing aside the silken sheets. Nothing else seems disturbed. Whoever delivered, the message was careful. Evelyn rose, glancing at the windowsill once more. What if the intruder climbed the trellis and dropped the letter from outside? These roses could serve as a ladder. Beatrice peered through the glass. No footprints marred the thin layer of frost on the garden side. It seems unlikely, though. The dew would have washed away most signs by dawn. Let us search the floor beneath the window. Together they crouched, running slender fingers across cool floorboards, until Evelyn's fingertips brushed a faint, irregular impression in the dust. Perhaps a leather sole. She rose slowly. Cousin, look, this mark could belong to a man's slipper boot, small and narrow in tread. Beatrice studied it. Yes, retrace the path into the corridor. There might be more. They hurried outside the room to the landing. Beatrice leaned over the edge, looking down at the polished floor. Ah, another mark. One set of footprints, leading toward Mr. Morley's former quarters. The butler must have cleaned the main hall last night, but these remain. Evelyn's pulse raced. Then whoever delivered the letter may have exited through that door. But why visit Mr. Morley's room? Beatrice shook her head, perhaps in search of more information, or misdirection. Sir Edmund, having followed behind, joined them on the landing. What have you discovered? He glanced at the smudged tracks. Someone moved freely in the house, then slipped away unseen. Finnegan must be informed. We cannot risk another advance. Beatrice nodded. I will fetch him. Evelyn, be vigilant in your room today. Stay within sight of the staff. Sir Edmund's face hardened into determination. Then I shall station a guard here until Monsieur Poirot returns. His counsel may shed light on this cryptic threat. Evelyn felt relief at her uncle's resolve. Thank you, uncle. I do not wish to worry you, but I fear there is more at stake than my safety. Sir Edmund placed a gentle hand on her arm. Your safety is paramount. We will not leave anything to chance. Beatrice descended the stairs swiftly to summon Finnegan, leaving Sir Edmund to stand guard by the landing. Evelyn lingered for a moment, gazing at the dark corridor leading to her door. She took a steadying breath before returning to her room, paranoia flickering with each rustle of fabric or distant footstep. The lamp on her desk gleamed warmly, yet the warning letter lay folded in the drawer, its hidden words still menacing in her mind. Downstairs, Beatrice found Finnegan in the pantry. Finnegan, she said quietly, station a guard at every entry to this wing. No one leaves or enters without permission. Inform the maid and the cook to keep to their duties. No wandering or gossip. Finnegan bowed. At once, milady. I will inform every servant to maintain vigilance. I shall personally watch the courtyard from the clock's chamber. Beatrice placed a hand on Finnegan's shoulder. Thank you. We must be certain no shadow goes unnoticed. Finnegan inclined his head gravely. Rest assured, milady. The Langley household is secure. That evening, as the manor's corridors grew dim once more, Sir Edmund made his way to the foot of the grand staircase where Evelyn's landing awaited. A single guard, quietly posted, returned his salute. All is well here, sir. Sir Edmund nodded. Good, but remain vigilant. Until Poirot's arrival, any sign of movement, sound the alarm. The guard, a tall constable with keen eyes, straightened. Yes, sir. No one passes without your order. Sir Edmund ascended the stairs, pausing before Evelyn's closed door. He gently rapped. Evelyn, may I come in? A soft response followed. Yes, uncle. He entered to find her seated at the desk, trembling as she scribbled notes. Sir Edmund closed the door behind him and moved to her side. My dear, you have shown remarkable courage. He sat beside her. Rest now. I will stand guard. No harm shall come to you. Evelyn placed the warning letter on the desk. I wish to find out who is responsible, but I fear waiting alone breeds fear. Sir Edmund offered a reassuring smile. You will not be alone. I will watch the corridor, and in the morning Captain Hastings and Poirot will arrive. Together we will uncover this mystery. Evelyn rose and embraced her uncle. Under the dim lamplight, she felt the slender comfort of his steadfast presence. Outside, the grandfather clock struck 1. Its chime echoed through the manor and into Evelyn's chamber as a solemn reminder. The hours of Langley's fate ticked onward, each one drawing them closer to a revelation long concealed in shadow. Chapter 18. The Final Hour. Attention hung in the corridor like a held breath, as dawn's pale light seeped through frost-glazed windows. Sir Edmund stood watch at the landing, his gaze fixed on the silent door to Evelyn's chamber. Below, Guard Miller paced with disciplined steps, eyes alert for the faintest disturbance. The grandfather clock in the courtyard struck 3 times, each chime echoing like a heartbeat through the stillness. Only 3 hours remained until Poirot's return, and the warning letter's cryptic promise of the final hour felt closer than ever. Evelyn sat at her desk, the hidden letter perched before her. She traced the inked words thoughtfully, recalling how they had first unsettled her. Now, under her uncle's watchful guard, she felt emboldened rather than frightened. She stood and pressed her ear against the door, listening for Sir Edmund's low breathing. Satisfied he remained vigilant, she unlocked the hidden compartment in her desk and retrieved the folded warning letter. With a steady hand, she refolded it and, heart pounding, slipped it into her pocket. Below, in the servants' wing, Mr. Finnegan conferred quietly with Miss Trent. 8 servants are stationed at each entry point, and no one is to leave the premises without verification, he murmured. Miss Trent nodded. I have instructed the kitchen and scullery to remain on alert. No deliveries beyond the usual are permitted. Finnegan offered a reassuring smile. Good. We must preserve every detail until Monsieur Poirot arrives. They parted quietly, each resuming their silent vigil. Moments later, a faint rustle echoed in the hallway. Guard Miller tensed, hand on his sword. Sir Edmund, descending the stairs silently, appeared at his side. "Did you hear that?" Sir Edmund whispered. Miller shook his head. "Could be a draught, sir." Sir Edmund nodded, though his eyes darted toward Evelyn's door. "Be ready. Should anything happen, alert me immediately." Neither of them knew that behind Evelyn's door she shook silently. She had found a second note tucked beneath her bedpost. This one was even more sinister. 3 hours remain before the clock's last toll. Seek me where time stands still, or your family's legacy will end at noon. Reality pressed in on her. I must show this to Poirot, she thought. But he remained at least 2 hours away. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and opened the door. Sir Edmund, spotting her, rose at once. "Evelyn, is everything all right?" He noticed the pale lines beneath her eyes. She held out the note. "Uncle, read this. It warns of a final meeting where time stands still." Sir Edmund's brow tightened as he read. Time stands still. The clock's chamber, perhaps. The only place where its mechanism remains visible. He motioned to the corridor. "Remain here. I will investigate." Before she could protest, Sir Edmund strode down the hallway, leaning close to the wall to avoid detection. Below, Guard Miller exchanged a worried glance with Finnegan, who had just returned to inspect the corridor. "Everything in order?" Finnegan asked quietly. Miller nodded. "So far, sir." Finnegan frowned. "Press every servant for any sign of movement. Someone knows the clock's secrets." Sir Edmund reached the clock's chamber, where the pendulum's steady rhythm sang a solemn song. Moonlight slanted through the tall windows, illuminating its gleaming gears. He paused, recalling how Morley had tampered with the mechanism before, and how Carraway's hired hand, Dalton, had fled, leaving one gear behind. Now the clock stood in silent testimony to that betrayal. Sir Edmund pressed a small latch and opened the locked door leading to the inner workings. Inside, he found a single gloved handprint on the polished brass, distinct from Dalton's prints, smaller and more delicate. Realization struck him. Someone else had accessed the mechanism recently. As he examined the prints, a shadow detached itself from the far corner of the chamber. Sir Edmund's heart pounded as a tall figure emerged, Mr. Vaughan, the clockmaker, his spectacles reflecting pale light. "Sir Edmund," Vaughan said quietly, "I had to speak with you. This note, it wasn't meant for mere threats. Someone changed the clock's mechanism again. They tried to freeze the hands at noon to sabotage our restoration." Sir Edmund swallowed. "You came to warn me." Vaughan nodded gravely. "I discovered loosened screws on the escapement wheel. If left unchecked, the clock will stop at its final chime. I feared the culprit would return at midday to finish the job." Sir Edmund placed a hand on Vaughan's shoulder. "Thank you for your loyalty. Together we will catch this saboteur." They moved swiftly to secure the mechanism. Vaughan knelt and tightened screws while Sir Edmund watched. "Time stands still," Sir Edmund murmured. "The saboteur wanted the clock to freeze, symbolically freezing the family's fortune." Vaughan exhaled. "Indeed, sir, but only if no one interfered." He fastened the last screw. "It's safe for now, but we must apprehend the culprit." Below, Evelyn pressed her ear to Sir Edmund's chamber door, hearing muffled voices. Her heart leapt with hope. But before she could step forward, a new sound, footsteps above her, echoed from the attic. She recalled Dalton's previous escape and Morley's frantic papers. Was someone hiding in the eaves? Summoning courage, she ran to the staircase and called, "Miller! Finnegan!" Guard Miller and Finnegan appeared within moments. She led them down the stairs, pointing toward the attic hatch at the end of the corridor. Miller nodded, drawing his sword. "I'll handle this," he said, ascending creaking stairs. Finnegan and Evelyn remained below, holding their breath. Moments later, Miller returned, leading a bound figure cloaked in a long coat, Miss Trent. Shock rippled through them. Evelyn gasped. "Trent? Why?" Miss Trent's shoulders sagged, head bowed. "I tried to protect you all. I warned that someone would strike again, but I feared telling the servants would cause panic." Sir Edmund frowned. "Then why sabotage? The clock?" Miss Trent's voice trembled. "I wanted to draw out Carroway's associates so Poirot could capture them. I followed Dalton's path to the chamber, discovered the loosened screws, and fixed them. I sent the note to lure them, because I suspected Mr. Morley's sister Juliana was seeking revenge. When she didn't come, I knocked and waited, but she never appeared." Evelyn's heart sank. "Trent, you shouldn't have acted alone." Miss Trent bowed her head. "Forgive me, milady. I meant to help, not cause fear." Sir Edmund placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Your intentions were true, though misguided. We shall handle this matter. For now, you are safe." At that moment, footfalls sounded from below. Poirot and Hastings had arrived. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he took in the gathered family, Vaughan and Miller. "I see the final hour has been unravelled," he said softly. Hastings grinned. Miss Trent's gambit drew out the saboteur. Morley's sister Juliana sent the letter. Juliana emerged from the study, taken into custody by Constable Miller. Her eyes blazed defiantly. "I only wanted justice for my brother," she spat. "The Langley clock cost him everything." Poirot tilted his head. Justice lies not in vengeance, but in truth and reconciliation. As Juliana was led away, the grandfather clock chimed loudly, its hands circling past noon. For a moment, time's flow seemed to pause, then resumed steady and unbroken. Evelyn exhaled, tears of relief gleaming in her eyes. Sir Edmund placed a hand on her shoulder. "Our legacy endures," he murmured. Beatrice embraced her. "Together we have conquered shadow." Poirot smiled, moustaches quivering. The puzzle of the clock without hands has found its final resolution. The little grey cells prevail. Once more, harmony reigns. Hastings stepped forward. "Shall we let the clock keep time as it was meant to?" They assembled in the courtyard as the clock's hands struck one. Sir Edmund raised his voice. "Let this be a new beginning for Langley, free of deceit and guided by loyalty." Evelyn placed her hand on her cousin's arm. Time moves forward, but never alone. The clock chimed again, and beneath its measured rhythm, the Langley family embraced their future, unchained, unbroken, and united at last.